Okay, hello everyone. I am Carmarco, but you can call me Marco, and let's get reading. So, first of all, I want to say this is a new setup. I'm trying it out because I'm starting a YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with this setup, but I was recording on my bed. My bed is down here, but the camera got too shaky when I recorded on there, and because of that, I don't want to record on there because it's really messy. But this is also really messy. So, we're just going to go with it. Today, I'm going to talk about the books, comics, and manga I read this month. This is a new booktube channel. Let's just get started. I'm going to start off with the books, then the manga, then the comics. So, the first book I read in the year was Should We Go Extinct by Todd May, I believe. So, this is a nonfiction book about philosophy, basically asking the question of should humans go extinct? Have humans caused so much pain that they should go extinct? This book has mixed reviews, however, I personally enjoyed it. Basically, this author goes through why extinction of the human race would be a good or a bad thing, like whether it comes like humans can enjoy art while other species can't, and the amount of pain humans have caused to animals, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, this book should have been longer. However, even though it was pretty short, I still personally really enjoyed it, though I do agree that it should have been longer. I also think that this book focused on animals way too much, and if it was going to be this short, I feel like it should have been more broad instead of just sticking to animals. But obviously, animals are an important conversation to why humans have caused so much pain in this world. So I do understand why animals were such a focus in this book, but I do think that this book should have been more broad since it is about human extinction. Um Personally, that's just my opinion though. Next I read Mango's Mischief and Tales of Friendship. This is a middle grade short story collection that takes place in India. Basically, we follow this prince and he just does a bunch of princely things. The first short story is about him basically having his own court and solving issues of the kingdom of the citizens and basically solving the citizens issues. Here's my thing. Okay, so this is a middle grade book, right? This book is targeted towards children. However, I also, even though it is targeted towards children, I personally believe that children are really smart, and because children are really smart, they should be catered to in the sense that they shouldn't have media talking down to them or treating them like they're fucking stupid. This book, I feel like tiptoes a bit on the oh, children are really stupid and they need to be repeated the same message over and over and over again. I personally feel like it's leaning towards that territory, though I can see why people would like this book. I personally struggled with it because I kept thinking, I feel like this book is talking down to children. However, I am not an expert on children. I am not a children's librarian. I am not a teacher. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but personally, from an adult who does enjoy middle grade, I personally felt like this book was talking about down to children. I also personally feel like this book was way too convenient. Basically, the prince has a bunch of issues in every short story, and he magically solves each issue really quickly, and it just was too convenient. I personally feel like the problem should have lasted longer, and we should have seen more issues of okay, what if the solution to the issue doesn't go as planned? What if something wrong happens? What if people aren't as nice as they seem? And I personally feel like this short story collection was too positive, though. Again, I am not a children's a specialist, so maybe this book is positive enough for children. Maybe I'm just too jaded in the world, and maybe this book is perfect for children. I personally just could not extremely love it because it felt too convenient and like I was talking down to people. But again, I am not an expert on children, so maybe I'm wrong about that. I read another nonfiction book called H is for Hope. This is a book that is a bunch of short essays on climate change. I think this is a pretty great collection. I just personally feel like I needed the essays to be longer. I listened to the audiobook of this, right? The audiobook was only like an hour and 30 minutes long, and there's like 26 essays because it's A to Z, because it's basically an essay from the letters A to Z. I personally feel like the essays were too short, so I do think some of them were really good. I would recommend this though. I think it's a decent essay collection about climate change. I just personally want it to be longer. Also, okay, I should say this. I did enjoy Mango's Mischief and Tales of Friendship. I want to make that clear. I just personally feel like it was talking down a bit, and I didn't love that, though I did still enjoy it. I read a good amount of nonfiction this month. I feel like this year is gonna be my year of nonfiction. Don't quote me on that because I'm probably wrong about that. But I also read another piece of nonfiction by Nydia Corafor. It's called Broken Places and Outer Spaces. This is basically, I guess, a mini memoir about the author having scoliosis and becoming temporarily paralyzed for a while. Actually, I'm not quite sure if they're still paralyzed. I was a bit confused on that part. I feel like this book was way too short, though I do do think it packed a punch, a real hard punch. What I will say, Nadia Corfor is an author I absolutely adore and I want to read more from. I read their Binti trilogy, and one of my favorite books of all time is their book Remote Control. So I was really curious to see about this author's history, like where they grew up, basically all that stuff. It was really interesting. And it was also really sad because there was a scene in the book where Nadia Corfor talks about the racism she experienced as a child. It was really hard to witness and read about, but this was a really amazing book. I gave it 4 stars. I honestly strongly recommend this, and I think you would really enjoy it if you are a fan of Nadia Corfor. What I will also say is Nadia Corfor recently came out with a new book, and there's a like a little chapter in this book that is directly correlated to this new book, and I just really find that fascinating. I think it's called like a rusting robot, and Nadia Corver talks how they feel like a rusting robot, and this new book also has like a second title called Rusted Robots, and I just think that's really interesting to like see this direct correlation between these two books and how this author has had this idea for this new book for a really long time. It was just really interesting to learn about. Next up, I read another middle grade book called The Guardian Test. Basically, we follow this main character who lives in a farm, right? And this is a fantasy world. Parents or grandparents are like, we want you to become a guardian. And in this world, guardians are people who protect the world. They can basically have superpowers to transform into animals, and each animal has a special superpower. And basically, this first book is about the main character going to an island where all the guardians live, where all the superpowered people live, and basically trying to figure out whether or not she can make it as a superpowered person. I personally really enjoyed this book. I will say this book is all set up. Basically, it's all set up for the rest of the books in the series. It's very slow moving, but I personally really enjoyed it despite that. I can see other people not liking this, especially if you are a child who wants something really fast paced. I don't think children who like fast paced books will really enjoy this. But if you're someone who likes slow books, if you're someone who wants to read something that sets up a lot of future plot points, I think that this can be a really interesting book. This book was really short too, which I also really enjoyed. Again, I think this book is flawed, but despite that, I still personally really enjoyed it. I look really white. Okay, now I look better. Sorry. For some reason, when I move, like my skin becomes white on the camera, and then it just takes a while to focus back to my true color. Yeah. Okay, next up, I read a short story collection, another one, and this one is a book that I did not like. It's called An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good. So this is basically follows this lady named Maud, and she basically murders people. She's like 80 years old, and she's just a murderer. And each short story, we follow her as she murders someone. I don't think this book was good. I honestly found these characters to be not compelling at all. The humor. This book is supposed to be like a comedy, I think. At least that's what people are saying. But I personally did not find it funny at all. Basically, the first short story, we follow this artist who gets murdered. And basically, the main joke of the first short story is how this artist makes dildo art. Like, haha, dildos, haha, penis. Like, I'm not a 12-year-old boy. Do you think I'm a 12-year-old boy? This isn't funny. Like, what? Like, it just wasn't funny. And I also think there are some issues with like sexism and mental illness that weren't handled well in this book. And I personally think I'm going to go through a full review for this book. I just think there are problems with it. I did not love it. Yeah, I just didn't like it. The last short story, we basically find out a character who has murdered is gay. And so you're telling me, I think the short story was published in 2018. You're telling me it's 2018. You want to write a gay character in your story, and the only plot point you want them to have is the fact that they're murdered? Like I think at that point you're just telling on yourself. I did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. Okay, and the last two books I read were part of a duology from Becky Chambers, and that is A Psalm for the Wild Boat. And let me see what the second book is called. A Prayer for the Crown Shy. Basically, we follow this monk. He serves tea. He does monk things, and basically he realizes that the job he has isn't fulfilling him anymore. So he decides he's going to go out into the woods where no one has explored before, and he wants to hear crickets, basically. Basically, this book is about realizing that what you're doing isn't making you happy anymore and trying to find a new thing that fulfills you. And while he's trying to, like, try something new, he basically runs into a robot, and robots and humans haven't been in contact for, like, years, like hundreds of years, I think. I honestly don't remember that well. And basically, this is about humans and robots reconnecting. This book is really philosophical. I feel like that could be frustrating for some people. Personally, I didn't hate it. I personally really love the idea of realizing that the job you have currently isn't fulfilling you anymore and trying to find something new. I think having that in this book was really great. I really enjoyed that. Okay, I also think this book had too many philosophical conversations. I feel like there's way too many. I feel like they could have cut down a bit more. I also understand that that's like the main point of the book, so I understand why it was there. I did really enjoy this duology though. I really love the character growth. I really love the robot. I already forgot its name, but I really love the robot. I think the robot is really amazing. I just think this is a fun book series. I think it's really cozy. The second book really surprised me. The second book is more of the same. However, there's a realization that the monk and the robot have, and I think the realization that they have is really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. It was a great duology. I think there's going to be a third book. I'm not sure yet. I hope there is going to be one. So yeah, okay. I've been rambling for a lot. Let's talk about the manga I read now. So I read Yokai Cats Volume 2 and Volume 3. This is basically a 4-koma manga, and it follows a bunch of different characters and the ghost cats they have. Basically, yokais are Japanese ghosts, and it's basically about how cats are ghosts and what it's like to have a ghost cat as a pet. This is just a really fun, cozy manga series. What I will say, this manga is like $15 each volume, and the volumes are very short, and there's barely any text in the volumes, and they're also in color, so they're pretty pricey. I personally want to continue this manga series. However, I will only continue it when I find these books on sale because I cannot spend $15 for 6 other pieces of manga. Personally, that's just not worth it for me. I'm gonna wait until there's a sale. But I do think this is a really amazing manga series. I think it's just really cozy and fun, and like it's just a fun time. Like I just love the fact that we get to see cats as ghosts. I don't think this book is like super funny, but I do think it's a fun time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I enjoyed both of these volumes. I gave them both 4 stars. Next up, I read another volume of manga. This one I was kind of disappointed by. I read Puppetsits Attract Volume 2. So I really enjoyed Puppetsits Attract Volume 1. Basically, this is a romance between two characters and both of them own dogs. And it's basically how opposites attract because uh each dog owner basically has an opposite to them. So this big strong man has like a little tiny puppy, and this like I guess soft gentle woman has like a really like a dog a man would buy. I personally really enjoyed volume 1 because it was just really fun. I really enjoyed seeing the two of them interact. However, in the second volume, we get introduced to a new character, and I personally did not vibe with this new character. Okay, so this character is a fresh college student. They're 19 years old. All I'll say is they read like they're 19 years old. I'm 23, so I can't be talking much about being young, but they personally felt too much like a teenager to me, and that really irritated me because like the way they were crushing over another character in this manga just really annoyed me. I just found it weird. I just personally did not love it. So I have a feeling we're going to get more of this main character. I personally wish we didn't. I wish we focused on the two main characters and the other side characters other than this girl that's introduced in this volume. Because I just personally don't really love her because I feel like she feels too teenagerish, and I cannot deal with teenagers in my day and age. I know I'm young, but like still. But other than that, I did really enjoy this volume, and I think it's going to be a decent series other than this character. So I hope we get to see less of her in the next volume. So I read another animal manga, and that was A Man and His Cat. I gave this one 3 stars. I did not really love it as much as I thought I was going to. And the main reason for that is because there is an animal point of view. So here's the thing, I love animal books. I love books that have animals and pets in them. I personally cannot deal with animal point of views. I find them so frustrating. They're always so stereotypical, and I just think they're always so poorly done. Like the dialogue is really poorly done in these books. For example, in this volume, there's a bunch of cat puns that the cat main character has, and it was just so tiring and so annoying. I just personally could not love it because of that. I'm tired of animal point of views because they're always so stereotypical and overdone. I feel like if you're going to do animal dialogue or animal monologue, you need to come up with something different and fresh instead of going with the same old route. A lot of animal point of views are very copy paste, and I personally need something new or just something that isn't so stereotypical about the animal. Like, I feel like whenever there's going to be an animal point of view and it's a dog or a cat, the cat is always the mean, sassy one, while the dog is always the cute, fluffy golden retriever boy, I guess. And I just need something different from those two point of views, okay? What they did with Grief and everything and with the male main character was pretty great, but the cat point of view was just so annoying. Like the moment I heard that grating voice, I was like, no, no, stop. Okay, so I also read an anthology from a manga series I like. My favorite manga series is Bloom Into You, right? I read the Bloom Into You Volume 1 anthology. I can't believe that there are 2 volumes of an anthology of this manga. I think that's so amazing that we're getting more queer anthologies and queer media in manga. I just really love that. I think that's amazing. I personally feel like this one was 3 stars for me. Honestly, I feel like I should have given it 4 stars looking back on it. I just personally don't think there are that many short stories in this anthology that really wowed me and made me think, wow, this is amazing. Personally, the reason I feel that way is because the manga Bloom into You is just so amazing. And I just know nothing can ever reach that level anthology wise or side story wise. And because of that, I just could not really enjoy this as much. And I also read another queer manga anthology and I gave that a higher rating. And I just think it's so unfair that I gave this one a lower rating. I had too high of expectations for it. Honestly, I would give this 4 stars now. Next, I read Sue and Tai-chan. This is another cat manga, and I gave this 3 stars. This whole book is animal point of view, so that really frustrated me. I'm just so sick of animal point of views, you guys. I don't want to see it. I think it's tiring. I think it's boring. I think it's overdone. I want to see something. I want to see more animal books without animal point of views, right? I feel like we got a good version of animal point of views in this book. Basically, we have the energetic cat and the old cat. And while I do think that was okay, I personally just could not love it because it was, again, animal point of view. So I give this 3 stars. I thought it was pretty okay. But I will say, if you enjoy animal point of views, I think you'll really love this. I talked about how I read another queer anthology. This is the Sasuke and Miyano official comic anthology. This is a boys' love manga about these two boys in high school who start a relationship. I think this anthology was really good. I personally really enjoyed it a lot more than Bloom into You, probably because I had lower expectations for this manga, which is so unfair of Bloom into You, honestly. I'm so sorry, Bloom into You. Please forgive me. I just think this was a really fun anthology. I personally really enjoy Sasuke Miyano, even though it's kind of messy. Even though like it's not the best representation and everything, and I do think it has problems, I still personally find it enjoyable. Despite that, I struggle with Sasuke and Miyano because I do think it's weird how Sasuke is kind of possessive over Miyano at times, and I also think it's weird how it kind of caters towards straight women. However, I can't help but enjoy it either way. Give this 4 stars. Honestly, I would probably give it 3 stars looking back, but whatever. I just realized I forgot to talk about manga, and that is the Ice Guy and Cool Girl. I read volume 1 of this manga. Basically, this is about this couple. One of them has ice powers, and it's basically a contemporary romance other than that. Here's the thing, I think the anime was better. And that makes me really sad because I was really excited to read this manga. What I liked about the anime is that there was more of a through line of plot. While in this feels like more of vignettes or like short scenes. I personally like the longer scenes in the anime and how there was a longer plot line in the anime. Well, in the manga, it's just a chapter that's like only 5-10 pages, and that's it. That's the whole plot line. I also think the comedy just wasn't as good in the manga. I just was so disappointed because I feel like this could have been really good if it had a stronger plot line. But like the anime did, but it did not in the manga, and that made me really sad. Though I will say the manga has a really amazing art in it. So yeah. Okay, so that was all the manga I read for January. Let's talk about all the comics and graphic novels I read for January. The first graphic novel I read was Zatanna and the House of Secrets. This is basically a DC reboot of the superhero Zatanna. Basically, we follow her as a child discovering her superpowers. I personally really enjoyed this. I will say what annoyed me about this graphic novel is there is this plot line where like the main character and her friend are kind of like growing distant, and basically we're learning about how their friendship is falling apart. And I feel like that plot line was never truly resolved. By the end of the graphic novel, we see the characters meet up again, and they're just suddenly okay. And I personally feel like that didn't make sense because what we were shown in the comic was them like slowly drifting apart. So the fact that they were drifting apart, and then just at the end of the comic, we're back together as normal friends, did not make sense to me. I feel like this needed to be longer so that way we could have explored the friendships the main character had. But I do think this was a pretty good comic either way. I feel like what they could have done with this comic is have Santana and her friends all be in the house while the plotline was happening, instead of her friends just not being part of the plot altogether. Even though Santana's friends were shown in this, they weren't really a big part of the plot. Even though at first I thought they were going to be, because we were literally shown one of the main struggles the main character had was her growing distant from her friends. They could have added that into the plot and they just didn't. And I feel like the fact that that plotline was never truly resolved, and or it was just resolved off screen, I personally feel like was a flaw in this book. I did give this 4 stars though because I still really enjoyed it. Next up, I read the first book in the Cucumber Quest series, The Donut Kingdom. Basically, we follow this main character, Cucumber. Each man in their family has a legacy of becoming like a hero or something like that. And basically, we follow him on this heroic journey, but he doesn't want to be a hero. Basically, this whole comic is making fun of the Chosen One trope. I think it's a fun comic. However, I do think the Chosen One one joke become a bit repetitive at times. However, I do think this is still a pretty fun comic series. Yeah, I just personally really found this fun, even though it was repetitive at times. I actually got the second book from the library, so I'm going to read that soon. And hopefully, I would still enjoy the series after I read the second book, because I read a second book of a series today, or I think yesterday. I don't think I'm gonna like that series anymore. Speaking of reading the second book of the series that I don't think I'm gonna like anymore, let's talk about it. I read the first two books of the Five World series. I read The Sand Warrior and The Cobalt Prince. This basically follows this main character who is a sand dancer, and basically a series similar to Avatar. We follow her as she's basically prophesized to become someone who has to light up the five beacons in the world, and basically by lighting up the five beacons, you'll save the world or something like that. Something along those lines. I really enjoyed the first book in the series. However, I realized after reading the second book that I might not enjoy this because this series has fantasy racism in it. I personally think fantasy racism, while it can be done well, most of the times it's done so poorly. And I feel like this is going to be another scene where it's done kind of poorly. I also just find it annoying when a character is racist in a story, fantasy racism or not. I just find it annoying when a character acts racist. And one of the main characters in the series is basically racist towards these blue skinned people. And basically in the second book in the series, he learns to stop being racist. I still was annoyed by the whole racism plotline either way. And I just get frustrated by scenes like those. So I get it. I get that they're important scenes. I just personally could not really enjoy them. Other than that, I really enjoyed the art style, and I think the plot line can be interesting. I just feel like it's pretty paint by numbers at times. I do still enjoy it though. What I will also say is that this series is clearly inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender, and if you're someone who gets frustrated by like things being too similar, then you might not enjoy this. There's literally the scene in the first book where the main character has a superpower that's very similar to the Avatar state in Avatar: The Last Airbender. So if that would frustrate you, I would stay clear from the series. I still do think this is a pretty decent series. I just personally don't like fantasy racism in my books or racism in general in my book. And because of that, I could not love the second volume of the series as much as the first one. So I give the first book in the series 4 stars and I gave the second book 3 stars. I think I might enjoy this still. I'm not sure. I'm going to read the third book because I did enjoy the first book at least a lot more. Next up, I read The Golden Twine. This is a pretty old comic published back in 2012. Basically, we follow this main character who wants to become a monster hunter, but only men in their world are allowed to be monster hunters. She also basically gains this twine that basically gives her powers. These monsters are trying to hunt her down because she has the twine. Here's my problem. I personally really think that this world building makes sense, right? Why does the character who originally has the golden twine, why do they have the golden twine? Because I personally feel like you're telling me this golden twine that basically has the power to make people gain powers is kept by this like really young boy when it should be kept by like someone important. Like it didn't make sense for the character who had the twine to have it in the first place. So I personally feel like to me it didn't make sense for the main character to have the twine when the character who originally had it in the series just should not have had it in the first place. Like it didn't make sense to me. Maybe I'll be explaining in the second book. I don't know. I found it frustrating because of that. Robots and the Kaiju Kerfuffle. It's a really short graphic novel. It reads pretty young, and I think it is for younger kids. It's about these robots who like save the day, and basically it's about them fighting a giant kaiju thing. I personally feel like this book was so not funny when it was really trying to be. Listen, again, I don't know children like that. I'm not a children's librarian. I'm not a teacher. I don't know children. Like the only child I know is my little sister, and she's decent to deal with. But like personally, I feel like I'm not sure if children will enjoy this because like it was so bro duty. Every single scene, there was at least five bro talk. Like, bro, do you believe this? Bro, can you believe that? Bro this, bro that, bro this, bro bots. Like it was so annoying. It was so frustrating. I personally did not like it because of that. There were so many bro puns in this, and it was so annoying. Like there was bro puns. Like there were 10 bro puns in every page, and every sentence had a bro pun in it, or at least had the word bro in it. I give this 2.5 stars because even though I didn't like it, I do understand that maybe some children will enjoy this, and I'm not the target audience for this. So I struggled with rating this one because I personally didn't like it. Listen, I think children are smart, but maybe they're not, and maybe they find bro puns funny. Maybe they do. Maybe I'm wrong about them. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, this book has a lot of bad reviews, and I understand why because it's not funny. This book has multiple books in a series, so maybe it does get good sales. I don't know. Anyways, that was everything I read this month. I read a lot. I really did read a lot. That's amazing for me. I personally only got back into reading like maybe a few months ago last year. So the fact that I'm reading a lot more, even if it's just manga and comics, really makes me happy. I'm not competing or anything. I just like reading comics and manga. You guys don't be rude in the comments, okay? But yeah, that's everything I read this month. Bye, I guess.